we all have these disappointments that come in our life.
Mhm.
They come in varying degrees, varying intensities, and
You can't really compare traumas. You can't really compare someone's ability to be resilient in a situation. Well, hello, how are you, HT?
my goodness, I am doing so well, Myrna. Thank you very much.
It's really wonderful to have you on the Business Leaders Podcast. And, I'm delighted to share with our audience today all the good works that you're doing. In our little conversation beforehand, we talked about how fast things are changing and that navigating change sometimes benefits from coaching. So,
Exactly. Well, you know that old idiom, there's nothing as constant as change, is certainly apropos in our day of age today. So
yes, I really think so. You're a transformational coach and you do consulting.
I
You
am, yes.
speaking at Christian retreats or at corporate events.
Yes,
And
both.
certainly these are times when our internal compass can be a little bit askew and we might need a little reset. Like, okay, tell me which way is north again.
Right,
So
right.
you
Yes.
help people do that.
Yep. I'm their leader. Which way did they go?
Yeah. Well, you have reminded me that in your background, you've trained and for years did training of first responders,
Yes.
and starting with firefighters, and then in the world of paramedics, and
Hmm.
also you're ordained as a pastor. So there's a pastoral coaching, component of what you do, and you have a first person's experience of personal tragedy with
Yeah.
the loss of not only your father but also your son. And
Yes.
sometimes it can just be so much more comforting to talk to someone who's been through something that you're personally going through.
Yes.
You were at Ground Zero in support during 9/11,
Hmm.
supporting paramedics and firefighters. And you also showed up at the request of the government of India during the tsunami recovery.
Yes.
And so a worldwide support of recover from difficulty. And in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, that's your perch, but you work with people all over the world and
Right.
certainly over Zoom or Teams.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much Zoom platform.
Yeah, I think in 2025, we just dial in and we're talking to someone close or far away, right? We just,
Right. Right.
engage in real time. I
Yes.
like the name of your coaching process, Reclaimed Living.
Yes.
And so share with me a little bit how you help people reclaim purpose and maybe regrounding in their faith, how they could see a way forward or light at the end of the tunnel. Help me with your
Okay.
process. People
Oh my
come to
gosh.
work with you. What
Yeah.
does that look like?
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think really this whole idea of understanding that life is in itself its own energy form, and there is always energy going on. And I think where we as God's creation get ourselves hung up is that we try to push back on that energy rather than allowing it to reroute itself. And when you look at issues such as sorrow, disappointment, grief, those are the big three that really just come at us full force. And we spend a lot of energy trying to push back on it rather than, this is going to sound a little odd, but rather than embracing it, acknowledging it, claiming it, and then working through it. And that's basically the pattern that I use with everyone who finds themselves sort of in this situation, is to recognize that we all have these disappointments that come in our life. They
Mhm.
come in varying degrees, varying intensities, and to know and to be able to talk with someone who has gone through it and understands what it's like. I as a pastor, we talk about the beauty of heaven, and certainly I celebrate the fact that my father and my son are there without question. But the reality is, every morning I wake up, I still miss them.
Of
You
course.
know, and so just trying to acknowledge that. And so a lot of my effort and focus is on trying to help people, first of all, sort of claim what it is that they're struggling with, and then um, teach them how to move through it. And I use scripture because scripture is such a great example for us of people who have gone through similar tragedies or life circumstances. I often say there is nothing that we will go through that the Bible hasn't already identified.
Mhm.
Maybe the specifics are a little different,
Mhm.
but the undergrounding emotions and feelings are still the same. And so, if we can look back and see how God has worked with people who, at that time, as they were going through it, felt their life was just in peril, but how it came out to be a beautiful process, then I think we can dare to say God's doing the same thing with us, and we have to have that faith and that patience and that ability just to wade through the difficult waters.
As we were talking beforehand, it was gratifying to me to hear your deep understanding that people navigate grief differently.
Yes.
And for some people, what might not seem like the end of the world, like a loss of a job, can feel like the end of the world to them.
Oh my,
And
yes.
others, you wonder, they've lost family members in a car accident or in some other tragedy.
Right.
But they have a grounding in, I have to find a way through. And so, you can't really compare traumas. You can't really compare someone's ability to be resilient in a situation. You find them where they are and you begin there, right?
Exactly. And a lot of my focus has really sort of transitioned as well, um, from from really helping people move through their difficult situation, to this one of preparation, having really been in the medical field for my entire life since I can remember. We place a high premium on prevention. We talk about diabetes, and yes, we've got treatment, but the better thing is to try to prevent it in the first place. Heart
Mhm.
disease, cancer, those things. But yet, when you come up and you talk about when you talk about post-traumatic stress, when you talk about crisis situations,
Mhm.
when you look at the etiology of the brain, and how, when we confront a crisis situation, really what happens is the brain just starts to kick into neutral because it's never gone through that.
Mhm.
And so we have no way to rely on it. So if we could prepare ourselves ahead of time
Mhm.
for situations that we think we may encounter, and say, well, if I would encounter that, how would I react?
Mhm.
Then, if that situation or something similar comes up, the brain can help us reaccommodate ourselves and say, look, this is what we're going to do. And it dramatically helps the individual to cope with the situation at hand and not make them feel as though they're despondent and they're out of control.
Mhm. Well, I really appreciate your perspective. I imagine you've had situations where more than one family member is dealing with a singular tragedy, but they don't all respond identically the same way in the same time frame.
Yes,
And
yes.
so, how can you be shopping for a new dress after we've just had this difficulty? Or, how do you help someone, get up and face the day, but not criticize them if they catch themselves crying or feeling sad? And so, can you share with us some steps that people might consider as they think about reaching out to you? And we'll share your information on LinkedIn and your website so people can
Oh,
reach out
great.
directly to you.
Yes.
But, what are their first steps to say, okay, I think I might be looking for some help to be more resilient or to navigate this better because I'm stumped and I'm not feeling like I'm recovering from whatever it may be.
Wow, that is a great question. And um, when I go about my mentoring of chaplains and pastors, people who literally find themselves one moment sitting with a family who has gone through the death of a loved one, and
Mhm.
then have to transition to going to do a baptism
A
that is
birth.
supposed to be, just so happy.
Mhm.
Um, I really, the first thing I say, and it sounds so silly, but the first thing I say is take a deep breath.
Mhm.
take a breath, step back,
Mhm.
get control, and slow down. I
Mhm.
think our culture just moves way too fast now, and that makes us really complicate the stress and the crisis that we're going through. So
Mhm.
step one is to just settle down,
Mhm.
to realize that right at this very moment we're okay.
Mhm.
We've got everything. It feels like it's out of control, but
Mhm.
we're here. We're safe.
Mhm.
Now what we can start to do is we can start to work through what it is that it's bothering us. And I
Mhm.
apologize. I use this analogy, and it's a pretty disgusting analogy, but I use it for first responders. I say, it's like vomiting onto the table and moving things around to say, okay, I've got to deal with this. I
Mhm.
need to deal with that.
Mhm.
And that is just such a huge step in starting the recovery process.
Mhm.
Second or thirdly, I think also as well as, I want to help people get out of this victim mentality.
Yes.
We don't need to be victims. We can be victors,
Yes.
and we can rise above this situation. Yes, everybody has gone through death. Yes, everybody has gone through disappointment. But like you ardently observed, is that there are varying degrees of that, and that's not right or wrong. It's how the individual themselves are reacting. So I think most importantly, to hook up with somebody who can identify what is going on in their lives,
Mhm.
help them to put it together, understand where they're coming from, and be non-judgmental.
Mhm.
Just because I or you wouldn't react in a certain way doesn't mean that the other person shouldn't.
Mhm.
Whatever we can find to help them get through the moment, that's what we want to identify, and that's what we want to use.
You know what I think is helpful with a veteran of so many experiences like you, that there's the time that the tragedy happens, but then there's all the knock-on effects that happen after that. If you don't feel like you can get up and go to work, do you have paid leave time, or are you not going to be able to pay your bills in 30 days because you've missed too much work? What
Right.
are the knock-on effects? And I'm reminded of the airplane thing, that put your own mask on first so that you're breathing, and then
Yeah.
you can turn around and help other people, maybe in your family or colleagues that also went through it. But first, you have to be functioning and resilient enough to do a day, and then
Yes.
to the day after that, and then the day after that. So, can you help me with what it looks like as time goes on? You handle the initial trauma, you figure out what to do next, but then it continues, as you know from your father and your own son, the clients that you work with. You might feel like you're managing it for 3 months. Maybe you're managing it for a year.
Right.
That
Right.
everything is different here. And now I have to face this. And now I have to face this. So, what kind of support do you offer in your coaching practice? There's the initial trauma and the reset that you have to do. Like, this is what life looks like now. But then there's the knock-on effects that come after.
Yes, yeah, and that also is a great observation, and um, it's an effect that is going to continue the rest of their lives.
Mhm.
I remember our son, who was sergeant in the intelligence division of the Marine Corps. We think he had a brain aneurysm that ruptured, that then resulted into his vehicle accident, but. Looking at that, I can remember, myself. Here I was a pastor. My son's lying in ICU because we're now keeping him artificially alive so we can harvest his organs.
Mhm.
Um, and I remember having a conversation with God. It was the day after Easter 2009 that he had this accident. And I was outside. It was pouring down rain. I was soaking wet. And I said to God, I said, you know, gosh, I thought I would have had a little bit of coverage here, Lord. I'm doing your work, and this
Hey,
is
I
happening.
should be on the VIP list somewhere.
Right, right. And literally, I just heard God say to me, what did you observe yesterday? Easter Sunday. And then I thought, oh my gosh, here is God who in our faith tradition, Christians, we believe God sent Jesus to die,
Mhm.
and I'm thinking I would do everything in my power to save my son. And here is God who loved us enough to send his son for us. So, I kind of dealt with that. And wouldn't you know it, just like you said, about 6 months later, I am counseling a family in my office who is there talking about my son was 23 when he died. Excuse me, our son was 23 when he died, and they were talking about their 23-year-old son who just sits at home and plays video games and has no job, has no, and oh my goodness, I mean, and as disappointing as it is to say, I mean, I walked out of that room saying, God, why did you take my son and you let him live? It just doesn't seem right. And then again, I just learned it's not about right or wrong. It's just about what is. And so those moments continually come up, and it helped remind me that a very good friend of mine said that he went through the suicide of his brother,
Mhm.
and that during the funeral, a person came up to him and said, look, this your process is going to be like you're standing in an ocean and the little waves come up and hit you at your legs and you can withstand them, but every once in a while there's a big wave that comes up and knocks you on your butt.
Mhm.
And he said, you just sit there a moment and you get back up.
Mhm.
And that has been such a crucial visual for me
Mhm.
because I still, now it's been, close to 15 years that he's been gone.
Mhm.
And, when I'm at funerals and they play taps,
Mhm.
I start to well up and I hear my son tell me, Dad, this isn't about you,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it's just those reassuring things that I hope, the cadre of people who have gone through this can share with other people to say, first of all, don't beat yourself up. That is as normal a response as possible.
Mhm.
Acknowledge it and work with it. Deal with it to see what it has to do with your life. And I've just
Mhm.
found so many beautiful doors and windows that have opened because
Mhm.
of those events where, again, you step back, you take a breath, and you say, what does this mean for me? And you process it.
Well, that's really, really insightful. I think, you know, people need someone to say the things they're afraid to say out loud too.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
they need to say, I don't think my other friend or person is sad enough, or he or she can't seem to stop crying and get it together. And I feel guilty that I'm maybe recovering faster than that.
Right,
And it
right.
doesn't mean I didn't love the person as much or the same. We're just not the same person, but how do you navigate those differences? So to have someone that you can just say the things out loud that you really can't say to the other people maybe that have been impacted with the tragedy. Like how come it's not fair that this person was taken and this person was not?
Yes.
And to just wrestle with the Christian foundation of that. Oh, God's in charge, and I need to have a word with him because this is not working out in my preferred way.
Right.
And God be like, hey, let's chat,
Exactly, exactly. Yeah,
but
pull up a
you're not
chair
in
and
charge of the world.
that's that's exactly right. And it's incredible too. And you just reminded me of, when I went to India,
Mhm.
I went and the idea was, somehow how do we reach out to the hundreds of thousands of survivors
Yes.
of this tsunami? And you
Yes.
talk about survivor's guilt. I mean, that was incredible. And the very first person I met, my guide and my interpreter that I needed that were assigned to me, took me down to this beach, and it was a beautiful, pristine beach, and there was this one lady walking on it, and we went up and talked, and through the interpreter she shared that the beach never looked like this. It was full of homes and full of the huts. And she said the day that the tsunami came, she was down at the ocean, she saw the water go out, she had no idea what was happening.
What that meant.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and she said the next thing I knew, and she pointed to the tree. I was up on top of that palm tree, And she said, I watched my village, my friends, and my family get swept away. And here she is of the Hindu faith. And, I'm trying to, just share with her a little bit about our faith and how she can continue to go forward. And, you know, there was this moment of silence that, it just seemed lasted for hours.
Mhm.
But it was just silence where we looked into each other's eyes, and it was just like we talked without using words.
Mhm.
Because sometimes there aren't words you can use,
Mhm.
and you acknowledge, yeah, this was horrible.
There's a chance to commune about the loss.
Yes,
And,
exactly.
for people to know they've been heard and they've been felt. And sometimes a difficulty shared is a difficulty reduced. It can help ease some of the pain. But, you mentioned people of other cultures, and certainly in America, we're a melting pot.
Right,
And we
right.
have every kind of religion, every kind of culture, every kind of background, and we have sometimes school shootings, or we have cars that run through parades, or we have different kinds of difficulties that affect a whole community. And that
Yes.
community is made up of all different kinds of people.
Right,
And
right.
so, but what we have in common is we love our families, we love our children, we might love a God that might be called this or called that.
Yes.
But, it's the same sense of human tragedy.
Right,
And so,
right.
when you speak to groups, when you come and help paramedic organizations, and, as you say, pastors need some help from time to time, so do first responders.
Oh,
They
yes.
help stop the bleeding and they put the fire out, or they do whatever, but then now they're in trauma. Now that they've
Right.
come out of it, they need help too.
Yes, yes. And what we're seeing is in our first responders, our fire, EMS, and even to a degree our law enforcement officers. Um, when you would look 30, 40, 50 years ago, you would see that people who were in those positions actually had come up through their childhood because either their parents or close
Mhm.
friends or whatever were involved. But
Mhm.
now we're getting people into those first responder positions who have no idea what they're going to encounter out there, which
There's no
really
family stories about.
exactly,
Mhm.
yeah, and it's hard for them to understand. And so what we here at Reclaim Living focus on is really trying to say, look, you're going to experience some of the most horrific things, but you've got to be able to third person it and not play the game. Oh my gosh, what if this was my child? What if this was my wife or my husband or my significant other or
Mhm.
whatever? And you've just got to acknowledge it for what it is, and then move on with it. But again, having a guide who can help walk with you through that time is
Yes.
is just so vitally important.
You mentioned that your son was in the military, and we know that there are military people who come home,
Hmm.
but they brought the war with them.
Yes.
But they brought the difficulty home. And, World War II, we call it shell shocked, and,
Yeah.
there were different phrases for it, but nonetheless, it's trauma that's unhealed.
Right. Right.
And so I think wherever the source of the trauma is, whether it's, Afghanistan or Iraq, or whether it's, the fire that happened in the warehouse, that this opportunity to reclaim your living will help you move through fill in the blank trauma from fill in the blank thing that happened. Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And one of the components we use is teaching something called compartmentalization,
Mm-hmm.
which is where, okay, if you're in the middle of some event and all of a sudden your mind starts referring back to this trauma, what do you do? Well, we teach people how to say, okay, let me take that moment, let me put it into a figurative box,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll keep it right there,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that I'll come back to it. But
Mm-hmm.
right now, I'm going to just tend to what's right in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that sometimes then people don't want to go back to it because they've moved on. But if you don't go back to it, it's just going to resurface and it's going to be even larger and more powerful.
Yeah.
So we teach them how to, compartmentalize, but also how to address that issue that they've put aside for a while so
Hmm.
that they can identify it. And if it
And
comes
get
up
it fully
again,
healed, right?
right,
Get it
right.
resolved as much as it can be resolved.
Yes.
So, when we work with people, they have a saying that some therapists use that when you first talk with a client, they tell you this is what they want to work on. But then when you do that, you find the real thing behind that, right? Okay, here's
Right,
the real thing.
right.
So it might be that I'm not sleeping and I have anxiety and I can't seem to get anywhere on time. And then when you work those things out, kind of as you say, just the practical steps, then here's the box that's been
Yes,
closed and it
yes,
it hasn't been opened. Okay, so now that you have practical steps to do these other things, we're down to the main thing that we have to take care of. And so
right.
sometimes you get help from someone about the thing you feel comfortable talking about, the being on time or the keeping a job or the to stop the drinking or whatever, the challenge is that
Yeah,
seems more handleable. And then as those things get handled, we peel away the onion to maybe the core thing that needs to be handled.
right.
So,
Yep, yep. And a lot of that is derived, I think, just through the process of trust. When you start to trust the individual that you're speaking to.
mhm,
Um, I've just seen it in some of the other people that I've been with. Is every once in a while they'll throw out something and test you, like,
mhm,
well, I did this,
mhm.
as if they want to see, oh my gosh, does that make them now unacceptable to us who are trying to help them?
Do
And
you issue demerits? Do you mark down their
that's
paper?
right.
Yes. Are
That's
they going to
yeah.
flunk the class? Hmm.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, yep. Sorry, I'm not working with. And the idea is, look, there is nothing that you can say that perhaps I haven't already done myself or thought myself,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that I know somebody else has. And so if we could just get help people get past that stigma, and drop the false personas that we put up. I love that one commercial uh, for the medication for depression, where they're holding this
Oh,
face that's smiling.
their
Yes,
pretend face.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like, wow, that is just so true.
Mhm.
We spend time, and it's okay to say, I'm not okay. I'm really struggling right now, and I need some help.
Yeah.
And we of course want the world to be okay, but
Mhm.
boy, I would hope that when I pass, you know, the thing that people will remember about me is just one thing, and that is, boy, he could help me hope.
Yeah.
And just because that's what ignites the fire within all of us, is
Yeah.
when we can hope and think, wow, we can get out of this,
There's a
move
brighter
on.
day out there, and I'm going to
Yeah.
find my way to it. Well, sometimes someone refers someone to someone like you, and
Hmm.
they have someone they care about, and they say, maybe you should talk to someone.
Right.
You think maybe you should talk to someone because it's been a while, or you're going to lose your job, or, you're kind of coping, but, the vibrant person I knew hasn't been around in a while.
Mm.
So do you take calls from people say, how do I refer you? Because my friend, my family member really
Oh,
maybe should
yes.
have someone to talk to.
Yes. Yeah, actually, about 3 months ago, I just had that very thing happen. I had a woman call me, and she was concerned about her good friend who she had already lost her job, and it was all precipitated because a friend of hers, a male friend, it wasn't her boyfriend, but
Mhm,
he ended up molesting her daughter. And
mhm,
it was I can't even imagine the trauma that she's going through, and the guilt that she feels for maybe introducing those two together.
mhm,
Um, but it just built so much up in her life that she ended up losing her job. And so the friend said, how do I tell her? And I said, look, you just tell her. Just
mhm,
say, there's obviously something's not going right in your life, and I respect you, I like you, I
mhm,
want to help you, but
mhm,
I can't, but maybe somebody else can.
Mhm.
And I'm working with her now, and we're making great strides. But
Mhm.
it is, boy, if we could just be okay saying, I observe this of you, and I want to help you.
Have a
One of
conversation with someone. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
My
Maybe.
most favorite scripture in the Bible is when Jesus says, I no longer call you servants because the servant doesn't know what the master's doing. I call you friends.
Mhm.
And boy, if we could just look at the world and say, we should be each other's friend, and really looking for not what I want your life to be, but what I want you to experience your life to be,
Mhm.
and help them claim that for themselves. I mean, I think this, you want to talk about solving the issues of war and poverty. I mean, that would be it right then. Instead of looking at building expensive yachts, maybe we, funnel our money into better situation. I don't know. I don't want to get in that whole social construct.
Well,
But
sure. If someone's watching this, and then I'll ask you a question about the future, but if somebody's watching this and they think, is there something I could do today to be more resilient? Is there something I could do today to prepare, as you say, that things are changing pretty fast and maybe they don't always change in the direction that's my preference? Can you
yeah,
give them a tip or some advice? Is it to restore some faith? Is it, to reach out and find out what resources are in your community before you need them? What is your
yes.
advice to help kind of establish a preventative resilience, if you will?
Yeah, and as we look at this idea of preventative resilience, the major drawback that we experience is people saying, "Well, I'm not going through that tragedy now, and I don't want to think about it because then I would have to go through it."
It would
Um,
somehow call it to you or something.
Right, right.
Mhm.
But the idea is, if you prepare ahead of time for it, then it's not going to be as um, significantly detrimental to you as if you don't.
Mhm.
But I would really encourage people, who are out there whose lives are going, just wonderful now, to say, look, you're going to experience some hard times.
Mhm.
Certainly, they're going to come up one way or the other,
Mhm.
and be prepared for them.
Mhm.
Find someone who can help identify what it is you may experience so that when you do experience, you can, respond to it. And I think most importantly, it is that idea of hope, that wherever you're at now doesn't mean that's where you're going to be for the rest of your life.
Mhm.
We're coming up, well, as we film this, we're coming up on Independence Day,
Mhm.
the day we celebrate the nation's independence. But for some people, that day wasn't a huge celebration.
Mhm.
They lost loved ones, or they themselves were horribly maimed in some way.
Mhm.
But you look back at Tom Brokaw's book, The Greatest Generation, there was always this idea of living not just for yourself, but for the sake of those who are around you now and who are going to follow you.
Yes.
And that greatest generation, we're still living off of the you
Mhm.
know the toils of those who have gone through. And thank goodness, I think we're past the 90s and the me generation.
Mhm.
But boy, if we could, just get back to that, and strive to make things better for people who are coming after us,
Mhm.
it would be great.
Well, that's a very wonderful thought. And as people think, what could I be doing myself with who I am today and with what I have to work with, to be a little preventative, to
Yeah.
consider their resilience. So look into the future, and we can share this as your last thought with our audience. Change is coming, it's built in. Do you have some sense about how people can navigate whatever those changes might be? I mean, AI is supposed to put everybody out of work, and
Right.
Bitcoin is going to change all the money. And I mean, everywhere you turn, there's like, oh, but we're going to have flying cars or automatic cars, or we're going to live in 15-minute cities. You can get a lot of maybe doomsday ideas about how the world is
Yes.
going to turn out, and maybe we don't feel up to how fast is that change coming and how do I plan for it? some thoughts
Right.
about how we can face an uncertain future.
Yeah, that's a great conversation item. And when we look at it, because, prognosticating disaster and horrible things is so easy, and
Mhm.
people make a lot of money doing it. I'm just appalled at comedians who make their living off of just criticizing what other people have done.
Mhm.
And I always in the back of my mind wonder, well, what have you done to make life better? But
Mhm.
that really is the great thing, is to say, yeah, AI is coming, but that's going to mean it's going to need a whole generation of people who are computer savvy in order how to work these things, and how to harness all of that information.
Mhm.
Flying cars. Well, holy cow! Wow, they're going to need
Mhm.
people to fix them or whatever, and just understanding that if we get in front of it, we can harness the technology to really help push us even more, into the positive, into the future.
Mhm.
Again, rather than being behind the proverbial eight ball and
Mhm.
playing catch up. But
Mhm.
again, a lot of that comes from our minds, and
Mhm.
we've got the best supercomputer already in our heads, and if we could just harness that power and use it, and that's really what we try to teach, and try to share with others.
Well, yes, I think the future is going to take care of itself as long as we take care of ourselves and maybe the neighbor
Yes.
to the left and the neighbor to the right.
Right. Right.
So it doesn't seem that hard. But
Exactly.
how do people find you? Reclaimed Living?
Yes. The website reclaimed-living.org.
Very good.
There's information there, and then they can email me.
Mhm.
I'm not a hard sale person. Um, but actually, what I'm also aspiring to do is within the next 5 years, is to really build a much larger network of people who are more, adapt and equipped like I am,
Mhm.
to handle the needs that are going to come up.
Very good. Well, that's exciting. You're also on LinkedIn, and we'll have that link below.
Yes.
And thank you so much for sharing with our audience. It's just
Oh,
good to
thank
know there are
you.
people like you out there. I'm sure people have a thought who's come to mind. Oh, I know someone who should talk to him, or I'd love to have him talk to our corporate retreat or our, church
Oh, yes.
convention, whatever that looks like. So to have a positive outlook from that's born out of tragedy and your ability as a first responder, and then
Right.
the spiritual grounding that you help people reclaim.
Right.
So
Yeah.
thank you so
Yeah.
much for
And
sharing your thoughts.
oh my goodness, thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and to
Mhm.
talk with you and all those who are gathered around watching. And if
Mhm.
I can be of any help, please reach out to me. I'd love to talk with you.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, HT. Enjoy the
Thank you.
rest of your day, and everyone, we'll see you next time.